All right, we are here. Really excited today. Got a special guest. Like I've told you, we're going to have some of these special guest episodes today. We got Steve Migs from BJ and Migs on 99.9 KISW in Seattle, or right here on the Odyssey app. That was a plug for the Odyssey app, or wherever else you get your podcast. You can get these, right, Steve? You download these podcasts even if you're not in Seattle or you don't get up at 5 to 10 in the morning.
The beauty of the internet now, you can hear anything anywhere. The beauty, and also I think like the downfall in a sense, like you can't be like, oh, no one's ever going to hear that, and it lives forever.
Yeah, and you also might know Steve from the MegaCast. I'm a subscriber. It's a great podcast. Love that show. You're also a drummer, and most importantly, you're a pro wrestler. And so, like, we got put together here by our friend CJ, who might join us. He's got one of those important jobs where you got those important meetings, but he's going to jump in here in a little bit. But I feel like our friends just put us together to talk here today. It feels like that datey kind of feel. We just kind of chatted here before we started recording.
Yeah, had the appetizers.
Yes. But, for some of the listeners, that maybe aren't in Seattle and stuff, let's just talk a bit about, like, your background in radio and your journey and what's going on with you.
I guess to go all the way back, I've been a fan of radio my entire life. Grew up listening to like Howard Stern and in the world of sports. I grew up in New York, so I was a big fan of WFAN, which is I think it's now an Odyssey station. They've bounced around from everywhere, but there was a guy, Steve Summers, who used to, I think he recently just retired, but he would do the overnight show. And it was like my buddies, all of us in high school, that was like we were nerds. We were just dorks. We loved sports. We loved talking hockey. We loved talking anything, but mainly hockey. But like, it was like bragging rights if you could get on the air. Not now knowing how radio is, like getting on the air in the overnights, not as hard as you think. But when you're a teenager, you're thinking like, this is the hardest thing ever. And when you got through, you go into school the next day, like, did you hear me on the radio talk about the Devils? And so that kind of got my love for, oh, wow, this is like exhilarating. Like that moment when you know you're on the air and you hear that weird like static sound that they would put you through, and you knew like, okay, I'm live on the air. This is like, there's no net. And I fell in love with that. And I mean, I already loved listening to like guys like Howard and other radio shows where I was like, I always found a lot of people loved Howard because back when I was growing up, it was more about the TNA type stuff. Like that was more of his style. Now he's become this incredible interviewer that doesn't rely on that kind of stuff. I mean, obviously still says stuff that maybe pushes buttons, but back then that was his show, was being real shocking. And what I found fascinating was the stuff about the people behind the scenes. Whenever he would give a hard time to his producers or his engineer and like talk about the inside radio, I was like, that is some fascinating stuff. And so that was always a goal and a dream. One day I could be on the radio. Did college radio in college, upstate New York. Decided on a whim, I'm going to move to Seattle just to see what it's like. I was enamored with the Seattle music scene, just the culture of Seattle. I just wanted to know what it was like. I was like, instead of just going there as a vacation, I'm going to see if I can live there. And if I don't like it, I'll move back home. Like, it's not the end of the world. I'm 20 something. I've got no responsibilities. I have no bills. But what I did have is no safety net by going to Seattle, because I wasn't living at home. And I didn't have my parents. They couldn't provide for me. They couldn't afford to put me up in Seattle. So it was kind of like one of those like poop or get off the pot type of things where it's like, I'm there and it's up to me to succeed. And if I don't, I'm homeless. And I have to move back home with my tail between my legs. So that kind of forced me to really grind it out. And I mean, I took whatever radio job I could get. And honestly, my first radio job was working on an AM radio station that was a Spanish radio station. Everyone spoke Spanish, the DJs, the music. I don't speak Spanish. So I'm running the board for them and like just waiting for them to point at me or say una pausa, and I would hit. But the beauty was I was in a radio station. I was getting experience in a major market. And when they were not there, and I would work sometimes until like 1 a.m, like from 8 p.m. on, I'm running like pre-recorded crap. I could just mess around in one of the production rooms and work on a demo tape and work on this and work on that. So And that got my foot in the door in Seattle. And then the rest was kind of history. I took a producing job at the end, the alt rock station, worked my way on the air, worked my way to becoming a co-host. Then eventually we left there to try a different station in town that was a new format, like an alternative rock competitor that failed miserably. We got fired.
What was the name of that one?
K-Rock.
K Rock.
Yeah, trying to piggyback on the LA K Rock, and it was more of like a classic alternative rock, focused more on like The Cure, Depeche Mode, Nirvana, Alice in Chains,
Right.
and it was a great station. They did no marketing, so it was like you build a brand new station. And I know that sounds like an excuse, and you know, at the end of the day, we didn't do well ratings, all of us on the station. So excuses or not, it failed. But you know, when you have a brand new station and you don't market it, how are people supposed to find out about it? So it never took off. And after a year, they just pulled the plug, and then it became Jack, which is still now to this day, which is kind of like throw everything against the wall and see what sticks. Like it's just music for everybody. And it's a great station, but that's what we ended up getting fired for, was to become one of those Jack stations. And then got hired at KSW.
Yeah, they have that artificial intelligence DJ over there, don't they?
They've been doing that before we even had artificial intelligence. Yeah. Yeah. So then got hired at KSW and almost had to start over again. Like I got hired to be a producer, was not hired to be on the air, but it's weird. I'm like the most strange, cocky person in a sense. Like I'm very insecure, self-deprecating, massive anxiety. But I also, there is underneath all that, I do have faith and belief that if I bust my ass, I will succeed. So it's like this weird struggle that I have where I'm like, I don't understand why I'm succeeding, but I know if I try hard enough and I stay focused, I will. And fortunately that's worked out for me. So maybe that's what's given me this blind hope for the last 20 years. But I mean, it's been I just knew, give me a foot in the door. Eventually I'll make my way on the air, and then eventually became the co-host of the BJ and Migs show. And the rest has kind of been history. But so long story to where I'm at, but that's like the shortest version of the past 20 years of my life that I can give. And then here I am still doing it, working in this industry that I love so much, getting to talk on the radio and entertain people while they're stuck in traffic.
Yeah. I mean, sustainability. I know the Mariners talk about sustainability. I mean, your show's been on for I know that you guys renewed this a few years ago, right?
Yep.
And you guys have just been there and a staple, and you're on this staple of a station that's been there for over 50 years. I mean,
yeah.
I grew up in Seattle, went to Ballard High School, and I mean, I remember KISW rock before I was even into rock, and as I was in that age group of like when the alternative big Seattle music scene hit. It's a little too young. Like I was I'll admit it. I was a KUBE, Eric Powers.
Oh yeah, I just saw Eric in the bathroom. He works at our sister station, Hot.
Now when I go home, if I'm not listening to sports radio, it's KSW or it's the end. But KSW rock. One thing I do really remember about them was their hydroplane called the Miss Rock.
Miss Rock. And we brought it back for a few years. A couple of years ago, it was back up and running, and it was pretty cool to see that kind of history come back. It's funny you mentioned the end, because when I first got the job at the end, I was a fan of the music scene. So getting to work at the station that helped break some of those bands was just like, whoa, this is crazy. I'm getting to be there. And right after I started, that's when the Real World started. If you remember, I mean, for anyone in their like late 30s and on, you probably remember when the Real World came to Seattle. And I'm sure it's out there on social media, but their job, because they would make every cast would have a job to do as a team. Their job was to work at a radio station, and it was our station. I'm like, I'm in my 20s. I'm a fan of the Real World. I just got my dream job working at the end. And now we have a big company meeting literally months after I took the job to say, hey, the Real World's going to work here too. And I was just like,
the Real World was huge back then. I mean, now, that was a huge thing back then. And yes, I do. There was the slap heard around the world on that season down on the waterfront.
Yeah, I remember being hanging out with the guy, Steven, that was the guy who did the slap that night. And it was, I mean, if anyone's seen it, that was a big part of the show. Cause like this woman on the show was kind of pushing his buttons for a while, and he snapped and he slapped her. And it was just like, dude, you can't do that. Obviously.
Irene, right?
Irene. Yeah. And all of them were great. Like, honestly, like a lot of people, like they obviously it's a reality show that's not so real at times, but I remember coming here to the station, and he was at the station in the mailroom in tears. And I remember walking in there, and I had a pretty good he was one of the people I was like knew better than most, I feel. I was like, hey, dude, what's going on? And he explained everything. And it was just like, holy crap, dude. Like and it wasn't like meant as a joke, but I'm like, you're now going to be that guy. You're that, like,
Yeah.
you became that guy. You went from being not that guy to, like, in a moment of a terrible decision, like, now you'll forever be the guy that did the slot.
Yeah. And you know, and if that happened, you are remember that. And if it happened now, it'd even be a billion times.
It would.
Yeah. So, man, that you just opened Pandora's box of that that real world.
Yeah.
So you were saying you're from New York. So how has that, as a sports fan, since you know this is a Mariners podcast, we're eventually gonna get some Mariners stuff. How does that? Who did you grow up? First of all, who did you grow up? What were your sports teams growing up?
So my sports story is going to be the dumbest story of a child who was so narcissistic that he picked his favorite teams based on if they had a star player named Steve. So baseball was my first passion. And I was a huge Dodgers fan because of Steve Garvey. And then he got traded or went to the Padres, became a huge Padres fan because of Steve Garvey. I mean, I always loved the Yankees. I didn't mind the Mets either. Like, obviously, like, my grandpa loved the Yankees, so I'd watch the Yankees with him. And then I started becoming a fan of the Mariners because I was a huge Pearl Jam and Nirvana, and I was obsessive about Seattle, not just because of the music, but like, oh, I'm paying attention to the Sonics. Here's the crazy part. I was already a Seahawks fan because who was the star of the Seahawks when I was a kid? Steve Largent.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy to think, like, had I went with Steve Young, I'd be a Niners fan, and that would be great. You know what I mean? Like, it's just the dumb reasons. I also rooted for the Giants because that was like my uncle's favorite team. So I really didn't have, like, my family were not sports fans. I was. So, like, I was the first in my immediate family that was obsessed with baseball. Like, baseball was everything to me. And a massive, like I said, Dodgers, Padres. And then I became a big hockey fan because of all of my buddies. And I picked the Devils mainly because they were red rotten. And all my friends were either Islanders or Rangers fans. So in a true, I don't want to piss off anybody way, I was like, I'll pick the team that nobody hates. And I don't have to, you know, but they're also from around here. Not fast forward, they win 3 Stanley Cups, and most Rangers and Islanders fans hate the Devils and their fans. But at the time, they were awful. They hadn't even made the playoffs yet as a franchise when I started being a fan of the Devils. And I still love the Devils, but I've become a Kraken fan, just hometown pride. And I've been wanting a Seattle team for so long that it was like, how can I not fall in love with this team? And so my biggest fear is that both the Devils and the Kraken are playing very well. And I root for the Kraken when they play the Devils. Otherwise, I root for the Devils. But it'd be a long shot, but we could have a Stanley Cup Finals between the Devils and the Kraken, and that would just blow my freaking mind.
That's win-win. That's a win-win for you. You know,
it is. It's like, but I would love to see the Kraken win. Obviously, I mean, the Devils have won their cups, and I will always root for them when they're not facing the Seattle Kraken. But I fell in love with the Mariners. Obviously, when I moved out here, what a great time to be. I moved here in late '90s, so the team wasn't awful. And then, of course, there was that amazing 2001 season. At that time, I'm working at the end. Dude, I was getting access to go and interview players in the locker room. Like, at the time, they're like, and I'll share a great story of how we got banned from the Mariners because of stupidity of the guy I worked with. But I was going to go get audio of the players, but I was getting like random audio. Like, we were on a sports talk station. We were a morning radio show that was trying to make people laugh and sometimes failing miserably at it. But I really got to know Jay Buhner during that time because he did not talk to media at all. But I came in my own stupid wisdom, which actually worked. I came in with CDs and I bribed him. I was like, hey, dude, if you talk to me, I'll hook you up with some CDs. I don't even this guy's, and he goes, well, what do you got? I'm like, I got Alice in Chains box set. He goes, all right, yeah, let's do it. So then that kind of became a joke. Like, I would get to talk to him. I'd bring a CD for him and hook him up with, he could afford a record store at that time. Like, he's Jay freaking Buhner. But I think he got a kick out of the fact that, A, I wasn't asking like boring, in his eyes, probably boring sports questions. I was just talking music with him and keeping it on the surface about baseball. Like, it wasn't anything hard hitting. I was never going to hit him with like a hard question about how the team's doing. I wasn't good enough at that. Like, and I didn't even think to take advantage of those opportunities, but it was great. Like, I had a decent relationship with Jay Buhner because of that. Also, Moyer was pretty cool. There was a few, but the thing that got us kicked out, our host was obsessed with trying to get an interview with Ichiro. That's all he wanted. He's like, I just want to get some, even if it's a 30-second interview. But the team's like, no, he doesn't really speak English, and it's very limited, and it's not going to happen. Somewhere he found out that Ichiro was a fan of pizza, which, I mean, okay. So I show up to meet up with my host, Andy, at the time. And I'm like, okay, we're going to meet up. We're going to go into the locker rooms and do the interviews. And we have our press pass and all that. So getting in was easy. He shows up with a pizza box. And I'm like, what are you doing with the pizza? He's like, I'm gonna bribe Ichiro with a pizza so he talked to us. And dude, we come down, and I gotta imagine it was Lou Piniella. I'm trying to remember. It must have been. This is forever ago, obviously. We go down, and whoever was one of the managers of the team are like, who do you have for these guys? Like, I could hear them saying this, and I've never felt more small, because I'm like, we look like the biggest idiots, and rightfully so. We showed up to all the other media looking at us like they already thought we were Nimrods. I mean, I'm showing up with CDs, like, but like CDs are easy. I can put them in my jacket pocket.
They don't smell.
Right. They don't smell. They're not edible.
Yeah.
So finally, like, the PR guy at the time, who's still there, Greg Green, awesome guy. I know he's worked his way up the ladder, and like Kevin Martinez as well. I've always loved those guys, even though we deservingly got kicked out of the locker room. Because they're just like, guys, what are you doing? What's wrong with you? It's like, why are you bringing a pizza into a locker room? And Andy, we're not missing a beat. It's just like, well, we wanted to talk to Ichiro. And they're like, we said you can't. He's like, well, I figured if I give him some pizza, I'll talk. Like, that's not his decision. Like, we're in charge of this. You don't show up with a pizza. It's so stupid. Fast forward 5 minutes later, we've been kicked out. Our credentials have been taken from us, and we're sitting outside of the stadium. And he's just eating the pizza. And I'm looking at him. It's like, I felt like we were like Jay and Silent Bob or some kind of random weird movie. And I'm like, why'd you think that was a good idea? He's like, I don't know. I thought it was a good idea. He's like, do you want a slice? I'm like, well, yeah, of course I want a slice of pizza. I'm hungry. Dude. And we never got access to, and granted, we didn't really try very hard, because, I mean, I'm not going back to them and being like, hey, give us another chance. They were always still cool to me. And to this day, like, I have a great relationship with those guys when I see them, but obviously our show, we don't need to have access to a locker room. So I never had to broach that again, but we've done things with the Mariners here at KSW that They don't hold it against me. And also I wasn't the one who brought the pizza, but I was guilt by association. But after that, the relationship with the Mariners ended. They're just like, no, you guys are dorks. Like, no, we're not working with you guys again.
I think this group of Mariners would probably have taken the pizza. That's
yes.
It's a different animal now. But also the funny part about that too is you brought the pizza, and it's like, these guys are major leaguers. They have catering. They have everything they possibly would want to eat already. Provided for them. Like,
I think if Ichiro wants pizza, they'll make him a pizza that's probably better than the Dominos that we brought with us.
You're like, I got this inside thing. The Mariners don't provide pizza for their players, so we're gonna bring a pizza. I love it. As of like, now I get it, because I was like, how could a New York fan, with all the accolades, with all the titles, go over to a Mariners, cross over to Mariners. Obviously in 1995, we had this epic run that we had to talk about for 25 years until last year. And so that makes sense to me, because I was like, oh, this guy has got to be a Yankee fan. This would be interesting. But now I get it. There, certain sports I follow, like basketball, I'll follow the players, because we lost our team. But no, I haven't picked a team where I followed the guy because his name was Myron, but that might happen. There's not a lot of Myrons out there. So, if I could go back and there was a star named Myron, I 100% can understand that ideology behind it.
It's so funny when people are like, oh, you're a fair weather fan of the Seahawks. I'm like, no, I've been a fan for a very long time. My reasons are not good. And I didn't grow up in a Seahawks family. I didn't grow up in Seattle, but Steve Largent, I saw him on Monday Night Football, and I'm like, his name's Steve. I love this guy. And then became a fan of the team. And obviously the fandom became even more heightened when I moved out here. And then, we've done a lot of stuff with players over the years, throughout the years, from like the Grant Wistroms from back in the day to Matt Hasselbecks to the Robbie Tobecks and obviously the Luke Wilson's more currently, and other players as well. Like, we've had a relationship, so it's hard not to root for a team when you've kind of built a relationship with certain players where you want to see them do well.
Yeah. And, this team seems very accessible to play, well, here we go. Let's play. Oh, here comes our friend. We're going to add Rod. Well, this was a good breaking point. Here we go. Okay. Oh, yes. I love it with the branding behind you, CJ.
Yeah, man.
One of our regular co-hosts here on has just joined us. He's friends with Steve. This is the guy that set us up on this date here.
Yep.
So
backstory with Chris and I is that we played on the same hockey team together. I mean, early 2000s.
Yeah, right around then. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. Then we did WrestleMania together and all that good stuff. And we
did WrestleMania together. We were on a team called the Buzzards originally, and then we changed the team name to the greatest hockey team name of all time. We were called the Browns, but our team logo was basically Mr. Hanky from South Park. Imagine the Pittsburgh Penguins jersey where they have the old school penguin in the triangle logo with holding a hockey stick, but ours was a brown Mr. Hanky with a hockey helmet on, holding a hockey stick. It was just a turd holding a stick. That was our team, and we had custom jerseys. They were brown jerseys with orange, and they were amazing.
Oh God! So when you guys scored a goal, when you go, howdy ho.
We should have. I wish I had the money to get like a custom painted goalie lid, like how players have now. Like you see the goalies. Because it was my design that made that turd, it would have been completely offensive and awful, and I would have looked back on it with pure embarrassment.
I was gonna say, I'm on a team down here now, inline team. We're called the Moo Crew, and so we have cow and then udders and run our stomachs. It's pretty good.
Beer league hockey's the best.
Before we hop back to the Mariners, since you were bringing up a little bit of hockey, I noticed, and this is controversial with like my girlfriend and my sister, specifically, you're a fan of Bowie, the mascot. The mascot. Okay.
Obsessed. Almost to the point where we might get a restraining order against us. We have myself and my buddy Danny I do the show with. We call ourselves Bowie Buddies. For Christmas, both of our significant others got us Bowie jerseys, like full-on custom jerseys with the number 0 and Bowie. I don't have a player jersey. I've never, ever been so obsessed with a mascot that I would ever even think of getting. I would think others are ridiculous for doing that. And when we walked into that arena wearing them, both of us, I realized just how ridiculous it was. Like the looks you get, like you get nods, but it's like, these are two grown men walking around with Bowie jerseys together. And then we got pictures with them. And yeah, dude, I just was so happy to have a mascot that was so ridiculous because I'm a fan of gritty. I'm a fan of ones that are like meant for kids that are super silly. I didn't want anything scary, or I didn't want Davy Jones, or I didn't want like a big octopus that was like a badass. Like I was pitching like they should have grungy, which would be like a grunged out mascot, like gritty, but dreadlocks instead of orange hair, wearing flannel, and kind of that's what they did in a way. Like it's kind of like this grungy mascot.
Because he's the nephew of the Fremont Troll, right? That's the story, the backstory.
Yeah, it has a backstory, and I was kind of like, "What is this?" And then you really think about it, and you talk about it that way. The Mariner Moose was a suggestion by a student, and where Bowie is. Whether you like it or not, there's so much Northwest Seattle, Pacific Northwest in it with the frayed jeans. Buoy, which is an object in the water for
a nautical thing. Yep.
And the troll, which is the troll underneath the bridge. He's a relative. But yeah, my girlfriend and my sister want him to stay away from the Mariner Moose. They think that they're going to give him bad habits. It's a whole thing. It's kind of like a running joke on like the text when there's Bowie stuff. What are you most excited about for this season, and just what's been building that you got to?
I'm glad we talked today after yesterday. I mean, yesterday was today when we're recording this. It's just they're fresh off of a 11-2 win after having a 4-game losing streak. I think yesterday would have been like a little. It's so early, obviously, but a long season to get like I know some people get knee jerk, and it's like, even with hockey, it's like, this isn't football. Like, there's not just 16 games, so I'm not too concerned. But man, I'm just excited about, obviously, Julio Rodriguez, to have a guy on that level, to have so much love for being in Seattle, to potentially have him be an MVP type candidate, a rookie of the year like he was, and even guys like Luis Castillo, who's just a dominant force. I just like that there's personality with so many of these players. Like, they all have their own vibe, like the big dumper, like there's, I feel like it's probably similar in a sense for a lot of guys, like a lot of people who like watched the team in '95, which was another team full of eclectic personalities. It's not just a boring baseball team, which I feel like we had for so many years.
Yeah, we did that. There wasn't, I mean, Felix would fit on this team, right? Because he had a personality, maybe Nelson Cruz, but the rest of the guys were, there wasn't that connection with the city. And and even if there were the W's and maybe the division titles and more, maybe we would have had that. But even for, I know, like the people that do like that were doing the marketing and stuff like that, they did a great job with those commercials, but that wasn't their personalities that we knew. Maybe they had these personalities behind closed doors. Maybe it's social media, the way things are too, that help that out. But yes, right. I was just down at spring training. I was on the back practice field. CJ was with me. They're very accessible. They're, for the most part, once they get their work done, of course, that's their sacred place. These guys are signing, even Kelnick, who seems like he's this, really cocky, kind of like aggro kind of guy. I mean, I watched him walk through the crowd and not talk to anybody, go do whatever he had to go and pick up. And he walked right back through the crowd. But this time he signed every single autograph.
Cool. Dude, there was a moment last season with Kelnick that I like, obviously had a rough season last year, but there was a moment towards the end of the year where they won a game, and all of a sudden you saw he's in the middle of that dance circle. And I was like, I think that culture is starting to, I don't know him. I don't know anything. I'm just a casual sports fan. I don't get too knee deep in a lot of the things, but I still believe sports should be entertainment. Probably why I love wrestling so much. And that's why I love personalities in sports. That's what, like the Seahawks, when they won the Super Bowl, even without winning the bowl, that was like a fun team because of all the personalities. But I felt like there was a moment last season where it stopped being work to him. And like, he realized that there's a culture, you got to have fun. And that's the vibe that I think this team has. And I hope that fun leads to W's. Obviously, I want to see this team win a World Series. But I think that having that kind of a vibe is going to help him, with his stats.
I would say like he relaxed, right? And it's almost like he felt like the Julio energy like went into him and Gino energy, all of that. And it's cool to see how we've kind of homegrown some of these guys inside this farm system coming up, where like in the past, I think really didn't have the connection. We were signing the big names and the older guys, and it was more, I don't know, it just didn't feel as fun as it is now, it's just like really fun to turn in, even though they're losing the last, the beginning of the season. But like you said, it's early, but you can just see how much fun they're having. It's really cool to see from a fan perspective.
It's funny seeing people lose their mind already early in the season. Like, they've only played two teams. Like, let's relax for a second.
Like we were 20 games below 500 or 10 games below 500 in June or something last year. And so, anything.
We did a podcast the other day, and the title was, "Are the Kraken outscoring the Mariners right now?" And then the very next day they scored 11 runs. So I said, even though it wasn't one of our recording days, I better go on and just like 10 minutes. And I was like, sometimes, titles and things don't age well. This is a perfect example of it, but I'm happy to see this. And, it was great to see Teoscar and AJ got their ice baths, and like, okay, you're on the team. You got the ice bath. It's like getting jumped into a gang, you got to have the ice bath in the presser. We've teased it. We've talked about it. This is what we've got through all the work. Now it's time for the play. You got to tell me, Migs, how did this whole you're a pro wrestler, and we'll talk some pro wrestling before you get out of here, but
sure.
Can you tell everybody your story of how you got into this? And just blows my mind.
It's great, dude. So, obviously a lifelong wrestling fan since I was a kid, fell in love with it. It's the ultimate to me. It's forever been my escape from reality, and I always love it. I mean, I've obviously went through some, oddly enough, the one era of wrestling that I wasn't a fan. I was in college and we didn't have cable, was the Attitude Era. Like, I only know the Attitude Era based on like documentaries about it or watching some stuff on like streaming services. But arguably the greatest era of wrestling. For me, it's the 80s because I was just an 80s kid. But like for many people, that the Stone Colds, the Rocks, like I was not really. I knew what was going on, but I wasn't watching it because I didn't have cable. But a lifelong wrestling fan, involved with the wrestling scene here in town, just as like a ring announcer for Defy and doing some other stuff around town with some other promotions. Just as like for me, it was like I get to use my radio platform to hopefully expose, because I love independent wrestling. Like obviously I love WWE and AEW, but for me, like I grew up going to see like small wrestling matches in churches in Brooklyn, New York with my mom. Like those are my favorite memories as a kid, were just going with my mom, making her have to sit through it. She wasn't a wrestling fan, but she wanted to see her kid happy. And that was my element, in a room full of like, in a church, oddly enough, of like 400 people yelling and screaming. And as kids, they let you go run in the ring after the matches. And, like all that kind of stuff was very important to me growing up. So like in a weird way, like I wanted to use my radio as a way to like kind of let people know that, hey, there's more to wrestling than just what you see on WWE. Like I contend you go to an independent show, fan or not, you're going to have fun because it's just so close and intimate. And where else? I mean, you get yelled at if you start cursing out a baseball player or a football player at a sporting event. Like you're told, hey, knucklehead alert. In wrestling, it's one of the few art forms. You can't do it at a theater show. You can't do it at a movie. But in wrestling, you're encouraged to say anything you want within reason, anything you want to a wrestler, and it's part of the show. Like they'll feed into it. And I think there's something really fun about that. Like fast forward, when I did start wrestling, like I've had people come up. I remember one woman coming up saying, I had a terrible week, work, relationships. I never felt better until tonight because I got to yell at you. And I was like, whoa, that's what a weird thing to be told. But like, I'm playing a bad guy. So it's like the greatest compliment. But also I'm like, there's something pretty deep to that. Like this is like an outlet for people to just let out whatever primal anger that they have and yell and scream at the performer in the ring. And it's okay. In fact, other people are going to jump in with you. So I'm doing the ring announcing thing and I'm having a blast with that. And one of my buddies who was a wrestler is like, hey, do you want to come and train with us? And I was like, I can. And he's like, yeah. First one's free. It's like, like a drug. But like first one's free. Come on down and just see if you like it. In my head, I'm like, never going to wrestle a match. But to be able to be in the ring, roll around, take a bump, which is like landing on the mat, getting hit, body slams. Like if I can learn how to do that, that's a life experience that I'll never forget as a wrestler. Because as a kid, of course I wanted to be a wrestler. Even when I was getting older, I wanted to be a wrestler. But this is something that actually is like, as silly as it sounds, like I live my life a lot of times, and I think a lot of people are guilty of this. And the biggest, like, in a sense, inspirational thing for me with wrestling is, for so long I didn't do things because I was afraid of how other people would view me. And wrestling is such a polarizing thing. And I had family members thinking it was stupid that I even liked it. Then the fact that I wanted to learn how to wrestle, they were like, no, you're an idiot. And I would listen because I was a kid and I was a teen, or I was this, or I was afraid of what my friends would think if they found out I was going to train. When I hit my 40s, I stopped caring. I really did. Once I hit 40, it was like a weird thing happened. Like I was like, I'm not getting any younger. I'm going to stop worrying about what other people think and start doing things that make me happy. Because if I do the things that make me happy, I'm going to be a happier person. And then the people like my kid will see their father being happy. And one day, maybe my child will be like, I don't know if I can do this. And I'll be like, let me tell you about the time that your dad in his 40s decided to pick up something that really is something should be done by someone half his age, and ended up being in one of the biggest wrestling promotions for a night because of it. Like that's an unheard of experience. But I just truly believe that, like, if you are physically capable of doing something, you owe it to yourself, if it means something to you, to at least try. And I still had a job. It wasn't like I wasn't delusional. I wasn't thinking wrestling is going to be my living. Wrestling is going to be that. But it was like, it made me happy. And look, I think my wife thinks I'm crazy. My parents have out and out said, when are you going to grow up? Like I'm still getting the same kickback that I did when I was younger, but I don't give enough. And it doesn't mean I don't care about those people. It means that I'm not going to let the people who I know they think they love me and they care about my best interest, but I'm not going to let them dictate what I will do with my free time that will make me happy. So long as I'm not hurting anybody. I mean, of course I'm, in the match I'm trying to, but you know what I mean? Like, as long as I'm not risking massive harm to anyone other than myself sometimes, but like, I'm going to do what's going to make me happy because I think I owe it to myself. And I also think I do owe it to my kid, even though it is a selfish thing. I love wrestling and I want to be able to say, I could look back and say I did wrestling, but I also want to know that, like, her dad is not a quitter. Her dad is not someone who's going to let other people dictate what he wants to do to make himself happy. And her dad is willing to put in the work. Because I say it's like easy. Like if I can do it, anyone can. But you got to put in the same amount of work that I did. And I put in a lot of work to get to this point. Like you can't just do it because you showed up to wrestling class. You got to lots of sleepless nights, lots of insecurity, lots of people thinking I'm only getting opportunities because of what I do for a living. And they're not wrong. I am getting opportunities because of what I do for a living. But I'm thriving in those opportunities, and I'm not embarrassing myself because I put in the work. So when those opportunities that I don't deserve, which are not wrong, but when I do get them, I'd be an idiot to turn them down. Like if AEW says, hey, we want to have you wrestle, and I say, no, there's other people who are more deserving of it. That's stupid. Like they offered me an opportunity. I should take it. And then it's up to me to either sink or swim. And so training, doing the wrestling thing for a few years now. And all of a sudden AEW is coming to town. And I reached out to one of the people that are in charge of the extra talent, which are they hire people on to do stuff. Either you're a security guard or you're a seat filler, which I was here in Seattle, or I was security for a couple of the wrestlers when they did a meet and greet. Or if they have time and they have space and it makes sense, they'll put you in a match on their YouTube show, Elevation and Dark. So the Seattle one happens and I see the list. I was hoping so bad for Seattle, I ain't gonna lie, because in Seattle, I'm on the radio. I'm also knee deep in the wrestling community. Those are my people. Like if there's ever a group of people that I feel like I'm a part of that culture, it's the wrestling scene in Seattle. And I met so many people that are like, oh, we wish you were wrestling. And I just, in my heart of hearts, know that if I came out in Seattle, that would be a pretty awesome moment because of the radio reach and also the wrestling reach. But it didn't happen. And like I can't get upset about it. The fact that I was even brought in as an extra was pretty awesome. Portland happens. I'm convinced I'm not going to get used at all. Like I'm just going to be behind the scenes again. I go to the room where they have like the board of what matches are going to happen. And because you don't know until maybe an hour before a match or the show, 2 hours before. And in some situations in Seattle, some guys didn't know they were going to wrestle until 10 minutes before their match. Like it's chaos. And understandably so. They're putting on a TV show first and then a YouTube show second. So as I'm walking to that room, all the other extras that are from here, they're all smiling, looking at me. They're like, dude, just wait. And I'm like, oh man, that felt good knowing that they were rooting for me, you know? And I get up to the board and I see my name's on the board and I'm like, holy crap, this is actually going to happen. Like, and then I see who I'm wrestling and it's Jake Hager. And I'm like, holy crap, he's a big boy. Like, this is going to be crazy. And I see Dr. Luther, who's a personality for AEW, but behind the scenes, he does a lot of stuff with the talent. And he looks at me and goes, oh, you're going to have a blast. You don't even have to he doesn't even need your help picking you up. Like, he's so strong. He'll throw you around. No problem. Like, oh, cool, but not cool, you know? So next thing you know, I'm having a match with Jake Hager. And so then your job is to find him and talk about the match. And I find him and he's recently fresh off of an injury. So at the time he had no idea if he was even wrestling. So I go up to him like, hey, Jake, I'm Steve Migs. I'm wrestling you tonight. And he's like, no, you're not. And I'm like, oh crap. Are you messing with me? Or like, he wasn't a jerk, but he was like matter of fact. He's like, no, you're not. Sorry. And I'm like, oh, okay. He goes, are you listed to have a match with me? I'm like, yeah, I'm on the board. It's you and me. He goes, I haven't been cleared yet. So I'm sorry. And I was like, it was like, I felt like something just got deflated. Like, you're like, keep a good attitude. You don't want to look like a sourpuss. But inside, I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding me. Like, I get the chance. And the one guy they put me up with isn't even cleared. Like, of course I'm not going to have a match. And he tracks me down. He's like, I'll check and I'll let you know. He tracks me down like an hour later. He goes, dude, good news. I've been cleared. I'm still nursing a shoulder injury. So is it cool if we don't do anything crazy? And I'm like, yeah, because crazy means you throwing me around, and I'm cool with you not throwing me.
That would be preferred.
Well, because a lot of those wrestlers, they're paired up with guys who are in their 20s or 30s that are trying to get noticed to one day make wrestling their full-time job. So a lot of the extras have a lot to prove. Like, they're like, I want to prove that I deserve to be, and they want to go balls out in the match. I'm on the other end. I'm not delusional because I'm in my 40s. There's no chance I'm going to get hired. And if I was, it would be to be behind the scenes or something like has nothing to do with actual wrestling. So I'm like, I just want to have a good time and create a fun story and get that one picture of me in the ring in front of thousands of people in Portland. Like, how cool will that be? So he's like, you cool with not doing a bunch of crazy stuff? I'm like, absolutely, man. He's like, you cool with doing character stuff? I'm like, my character in wrestling is mostly character stuff. Like, I'm not a guy that does crazy moves. And you could see like there was like a moment of relief. And I think maybe in a way they meant to pair him with me, because the guy who sets it all up does do his research on the wrestlers that they're pairing these guys up with to make sure it's going to be a good fit. I'm like, dude, I'm all like, as he calls it, Shakespeare, like all character driven, all storytelling. So you could tell immediately felt more relieved. And then he's like, well, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I want to make you look good. Like, that's the job of an enhancement talent. And he's just like, no, but what would you want to do in the match? He's like, I have my purple hat. That's a big thing right now with the show. And people are really loving the fact that I love this like silly bucket hat that he wears. And so my first thought was, I'm like, how do you get noticed in a sea of great wrestlers? So you got to create a moment. So I'm like, has anyone ever worn your hat? And he's like, no. I was like, would it be okay if I take your hat, I put it on, but I'm so excited to put it on, I forget I'm in a match, and I turn around and you're just waiting for me and you just murder me? And he just starts laughing. He's like, that is awesome. Let's do that. And then we just kind of went from there. But in this short 2.5 minute match, there was a lot of improv that happened out there because some things didn't go exactly how planned. Like the hat wasn't supposed to fall off the turnbuckle and it did. So I had to kind of figure that out. Oh, but that was on me. Like, and that was crazy. Like, thank goodness, like I've been trained well enough to like be ready for those moments. Like as you said, like you did improv comedy and sketch comedy. Like sometimes things happen that aren't planned. You have to figure out how to go with the flow and make it work.
And those are the biggest gifts sometimes.
And it made it more. It seemed more real that I was obsessed with the hat because it fell and I picked it up and I'm mocking him. And he's like, give me back the hat. And then we went, and then went back into it. So when he actually hit me with the hat, it made more sense because I was actually getting under his skin about the hat. And that was never the plan. And afterwards, like he pulled me aside and said, dude, you saved the match. And that meant everything to me. He's like, you made me look like $1 million and you saved the match. And I was like, and as silly as it sounds, like as soon as I left, I checked my social media, he instantly started following me on Twitter. I was like, clearly made him happy. Like he wouldn't do any of that. He wouldn't have said any of that. The people, I didn't bug anybody, like the producers, like Tony Khan, like people like, did you get feedback? I'm like, man, I was there for a 2-minute enhancement match. I knew my role and I was just there to have a good time and create a great memory. And if something came of it, like maybe I get invited back when they come back to town. Awesome. But I didn't want to be the guy that would be like pushing and I basically wanted to be seen, but not, I don't want to bug people. I did my job and I had a blast doing it. And I never thought in a million years, again, to go back to, I'm in my 40s. I decided to do something that everyone told me is stupid to do. But now all of a sudden I'm in the second biggest company in the entire world. And for some, their favorite wrestling promotion. And I'm wrestling on their show in front of, 6,000-7,000 people in an arena in Portland. Like that should never happen to someone like me. Like it really shouldn't. Like I'm in my late 40s. I should not be doing that. But here I am doing it because I didn't care. I only wanted to have fun and make myself happy and put in the work to be good enough to do it, but never expect to do it. And so I'm sorry I'm rambling, but it's something that it's probably one of my proudest moments outside of like family stuff. And when it comes to like random extracurricular stuff, I don't think I've ever been more proud of what I was able to accomplish in such a random set of circumstances at this point in my life.
And he nailed you. He nailed you pretty good, didn't he?
He came at me like a dude.
YouTube. I'm looking at it right now.
He came at me like a wrecking ball. I knew he was going to hit me, but I didn't realize that the speed and the force. Like I'm not even kidding. And he hit me so hard that I lost my voice for 3 days. And my voice, it took 3 months before it was fully back to what it was before that. Like I was drinking honey, throat coat. It was like I solidly lost my voice where I was whispering for 3 days. And then for about 3 more weeks on air, people are like, what's wrong with your voice? Did you blow it out? He hit me so hard, he blew out my vocal cords. And I'd do it again though tomorrow. Like I ain't gonna lie. Like I would same exact circumstances, I would do it again.
Yeah, I mean that guy was like an NCAA champion, wasn't he? I mean, he's got like a wrestling. He's grown up. He did MMA for one point. I mean, he's a big guy. Yeah, Bellator. Also known as Jack Hager
from Oklahoma State.
Yeah, and he was Jack Hager on Jack Swagger on WWE.
And he was a WWE champion. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
it's like everything. It was crazy to do it, and the crazy part was so that I do it, and then the next week they reference it on Dynamite that he beat Steve Migs on
yeah,
AW Dark, and I'm like, and my buddy's like, they never like just randomly name check the enhancement talent on Dynamite the following week. Like it was like here he comes out of the back with Chris Jericho and the Jericho Appreciation Society, and underneath it says Jake Hager dismantled Steve Migs on Dark last week. And I'm like, what the hell? Like it created like a memory for the people who worked there as well. And I thought that was really freaking cool.
yeah. And you know, you've had on your mega cast, I've noticed you've had Darby Allin, who's from Seattle area, yep. And you've had Tony Khan. So like when the guy's like, did you get notes from him? Like, hey, listen, I have the guy on my show. You know,
the funny thing was with Tony, I'm pretty sure like when I talked to him, like he jokingly invited me to be on Dark or Elevation. He's like, you should come on, but like go through the proper channels. And everyone's like, oh, did he come up to find you? I'm like, no, like he's so busy. I don't even think he remembered. You know what I mean? Like he's got so much going on. Like that would be really
so,
a pro NFL and also a Premier League soccer team as well. Like he's got a lot on his plate. The last thing he's thinking, did the radio guy that I talked to, is he getting it up? Because some people are like, you're definitely going to wrestle in Seattle. Tony Khan's going to make it happen. I'm like, I don't think Tony Khan puts any thought into that. And clearly he didn't. And it's no disrespect. And it's not like me being upset. Like he shouldn't. And even when I interviewed him afterwards, like I brought it up because I interviewed him after I wrestled. And I said, oh, dude, I don't know if you remember, but I was there. And I could kind of tell like he kind of remembered, but didn't fully because I was another enhancement talent in a sea of enhancement talent. And I'm not thinking I'm anything more special than anyone else. And like the fact that I got to do it, man, it's surreal. It's still surreal to this day. Like whenever I see a picture or a video clip of it, it's crazy.
Yeah, it is. And look, I know we're running out of time because you got to get to the mega cast, which I'll talk about more in the intro. Just one quick thing. Two quick things. WrestleMania just wrapped up here. WrestleMania 39. I was there, and I wore the sweatshirt for you today. Both days.
You go both nights?
I went both nights. If I was I heard you talk about it on when I was listening to BJ Migs. It was so huge. That stadium is so huge. I would have been in the fourth row at a football game, and it was still a bit of ways because the show plays big, but the action is definitely there. You're there for the experience. But it was crazy. It was fun. It was 2 nights, 2 nights of just eating hot dogs and hamburgers in the parking lot to survive because you can't get up. So my meals back to back went hamburger, hot dog, hamburger, cheesesteak, hamburger. I mean, I'm not kidding. That's all I ate. And I'm happy and I'm proud of it. Controversial, and I'm a bloodline guy. How did you feel about that? And what do you think about the Snoop Dogg thing?
Snoop Dogg thing was hilarious. I thought, obviously they were dealt a bad hand with what happened with Shane. I hate that people are like, oh, he's too old to be doing that. I'm like, I've seen people half his age do the exact same thing, have blown out quads. It's just a freak thing. Yeah, it might be because of age. It might be because maybe whatever the reason, but it's a bummer that age is being brought into it as an older guy saying that, of course, but you know what I mean? Like that's unfortunate that I hope he gets another opportunity to do something cool solely because that would suck to have that be his last taste in his mouth of a WrestleMania moment.
Yeah. And I don't feel like it's a age thing. I think the McMahons just have a quad. That's like their weak spot. Cause like I've said this before,
yes.
Go watch Vince blow out 2 quads within 30 seconds.
Sliding in.
Yeah, some people like in their families they have some people have bad backs, some people have hairline issues. They have quad issues. The McMahons
have a quad issue. Yeah,
issue.
I really wanted to see Cody Rhodes win. I ain't gonna lie, but I also love the idea of the more I think about it. And I think it was even like Bully Ray on the Busted Open podcast brought up the question of all questions. If Dusty Rhodes was alive and he was booking that match, how would he have it end? And everyone was just like, yeah, he probably would have had his son lose because everybody wants it's more about the chase than it is about winning. Like it's and he's only he's gonna go through his quote unquote hard times against Brock Lesnar. And once that happened, I'm like, oh man, I'm in. Like I don't care when I just hope one day he does win it because I think that's that to me is the ultimate story. And if he retires one day and he hadn't won the WWE Championship, then I would look back and be bummed. But I thought that was a phenomenal match. I really loved the match from beginning to end. Yeah. I didn't expect that ending, but I wasn't mad. Like, I don't, dude, at the end of the day, like, why am I going to get mad about two guys pretending to fight each other for our entertainment? Like, it's really like, to me, it's just entertainment. Yeah, of course, I would like to see things end differently, but to get mad about it seems a little like I don't really absorb my entertainment that way. Like, I got upset about like when my favorite sports team loses, but by the end of the night, I moved on. I got my kid to worry about, or I'm watching something else. Like, yeah, of course, some things sting more than others, but I can't let myself get too worked up about that. I think my favorite match might have been the Rhea Ripley Charlotte Flair match. That was
a great wrestling match. And going back to the ending there, I haven't posted any of my stuff on social media. I'm going to. I just have so much where I'm like, I want to get to the. But I will say that moment when Solo Sikoa hit Cody, and you knew that maybe this was gonna happen, and then that 1, 2, and like usually those 1, 2, 3s kind of get louder and louder as they go. It was the opposite. It was 1, 2, 3, and it felt like Cody Rhodes had the ball on the 1-yard line at home in front of the crowd, and the interception happened. And that's what it felt like in that stadium. But the Bloodline people, you could hear him screaming. So it was the exact feeling of a road team just pulling this out. And you could hear, out of 80,000, maybe 15 to 20,000 people really wanted the Bloodline. So it was a thing. It was, I have some good videos I'm going to put out off the show to you of just the people, like, you had these moments, and then you had the people going, I told you. And then, of course, the murder happened the next day. And so it just compounds everything. So
it's funny you said, because I did compare. I was like, I was at the Super Bowl when the Seahawks lost to the Patriots with the interception. And of course, that was devastating, and a different type of devastating, but it felt similar in a sense, because it was just like, it's happening. And then it does. And you're like, wait, no, something has to happen to take that back. And I had that same kind of feeling, granted, not as extreme, but it was just like, oh no, there's going to be some kind of like referee's going to come in and say, no, they cheated. Like you're waiting for, this is not how it's supposed to end. And the crowd also felt the same way. Like it was like this anticipation, and it got deflated quick. I don't know. That's funny you brought that up, because I felt the same way in a sense. Like that was a similar like emotional roller coaster.
And to tie it into the Mariners, it's the same feeling that you felt when I was there for the 18-inning game up in Seattle, and Jeremy Pena hits that. It was like the same feeling, and it was just for me, I was like, oh great, they're gonna carry on this storyline. And you're right, Dusty Rhodes would be like, do it this way, then when we have the rematch, everybody's going to be here tenfold, pay money. It's good. Listen, I know you're running out of time. You got to go do your podcast. I want to thank you for coming on, and hopefully we can talk again, talk some wrestling and all of that.
Speaking of podcasts and wrestling, another star of WrestleMania, we're going to talk to him on this week's episode of the Megacast. I'll have it on there I think tomorrow, is Dom Mysterio. I'm going to get to talk to. And Dominic Mysterio somehow in 1 year went from, dude, he's not ready, to being one of my favorite people to watch on television. In that entrance and the match, from throwing the drink into his sister's face to everything about it. I'm like, how in 1 year, I don't think there's been a quicker turnaround to somebody's rookie year of being a wrestler than Dom Mysterio. It's like he became a completely different person in the course of a year.
He's right up there with Sami Zayn of just where it's happened in one year, and that's obviously credit to them, but also the people booking them and stuff like that. Sure. So these are all on the Odyssey app, right? So Megacast right here and so I'll definitely be checking that out. But again, this is Steve Migs from BJ Migs 99.9 KISW, The Rock in Seattle, or right here on the Odyssey app, and of course Megacast. And check you out. What do you do? What's the wrestling SOS? Was that what POS?
Yeah, wrestling? SOS is like the main Seattle promotion that I wrestle. Like with having a kid, like I have a good problem to have, but in a perfect world, if I didn't have any other responsibilities, like there's great promotions happening every weekend. It seems like in the Pacific Northwest, from Vancouver to Seattle, all around Washington to Portland. And I've been lucky enough to wrestle at a lot of them, but I had to finally hit a point where it's like, I can't do this every weekend. But SOS is definitely like my home promotion. I wrestle there every show that's happening. So a week from today when this airs, so next Friday, whatever that, the 14th or 15th, whatever date, I think it's 15th. I don't know. But I'll be wrestling at that one. It's at Edison Square in Tacoma. That one, to me, is the perfect promotion to bring a non-wrestling fan to, because there's elements of comedy. They have live commentary, so that helps keep you interested in what's happening in the match if you don't really understand the nuances of pro wrestling. And it's very crowd friendly. That's the room where I walk out, they're chanting F Steve Migs. I play a bad guy and they hate me. And it's a fun experience. If you ever wanted to yell at me, this is the perfect place to do it, where it's encouraged. But great matches too. There's great wrestlers. So there's comedy, but it's not like they're using comedy to mask bad wrestling. There's comedy, and it enhances also some of the great matches that are happening. In Portland, I wrestle at DOA a lot. I'm not going to be there this upcoming weekend because of Paw Patrol. I'm taking my kid to that. But usually I'm there at DOA in Portland every month as well. Those are my main two ones. And then I still ring announce for Defy Wrestling, which is like the super indie in town. Like they're the one that flies in. I mean, their first show ever had Cody Rhodes on it and Shane Strickland. And, they continue to bring in great wrestlers, including Shane Strickland's at this weekend's one, which I'm missing also because of Paw Patrol. Damn Paw Patrol and my kid getting in the way of all the fun wrestling stuff. But I typically am ring announcing, and sometimes I wrestle at that promotion as well when it makes sense.
Cool. Where do you get these tickets for next Friday? Because guess what? I'm going to Seattle next week. I'm coming there next Friday.
Dude, that'd be badass. SOSprowrestling.com. And just hit me up beforehand, though. But let me know if you are, because
there's 100.
What's that?
100 more Mariner games to go to when I'm in town. I'm up there for a couple of weeks, so I'm coming down to the wrestling in Tacoma.
That's gonna be fun. And this upcoming one, so there's been a storyline that's been going on for 2 years. Instead of having a weapon or a manager, I had a fan. He was my biggest fan, as it was called on, and he was obsessive Steve Migs fan. But I made him help me cheat to win my matches for the last 2 years, and all he wanted was to be my fan and be my friend. But you can't be friends with your fans. So like I kept him at a safe distance, but eventually it got to the point where I kept pissing him off. And recently he won what's like Money in the Bank, but we call it the Golden Wilson. It's a volleyball that you win in a battle royal kind of a thing. And he won it. And so he was able to cash it in for a title match whenever he wanted. And I was the current SOS champion at the time. And he decided not to cash it in, but he was so pissed at me. And I think you saw that match with Kikyo because he got taped up to a chair and I never helped him get out of the chair and all this. There's a lot of backstory, 2 years of drama. And he handed it over to this guy, Malcolm Flex, who was kind of like my biggest rival, and gave him the Golden Wilson. And Malcolm cashed it in right after I had a 20-minute match against a guy by the name of Daniel Makabe. He came in, he beat me for the title. Of course, I'm not happy with that. I took it out on my fan the next show with a chair. And now we're having a big blow off, a no disqualification match, or as we call it, the Island Rules match, where anything goes. And that's happening at the next show between me and my biggest fan, my ex-fan, as he's called now.
That's great. I'll be down there, Steve. I'll let you go so you can get on the MegaCast, but thank you again for coming on. And we'll hopefully talk soon, talk some more wrestling, talk some more Mariners baseball this season. And again, check them out on 99.9 KISW in Seattle, or here on the Odyssey app, or on the MegaCast.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Migs.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. That was a lot of fun.